Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing.
Thank you. Can I have apologies? Apologies. Go ahead. Olga has sent her apologies, and I don't see any other hands. So move on then. Item number 2, declarations of interest. Is there any declarations of interest from the floor, or are members happy to declare them as the meeting is in progress? Happy enough. Right, we move on to agenda item number 3, the environmental health report, and I'm going to ask Gillian to give this.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Item 3.1 is an overview of our air quality monitoring and our draft air quality report. And I've brought Paul with us this evening. So I'd like Paul just to take us through the report. Members, there are some interesting points in that, and it does cut across a number of our other themes, particularly into climate change and some of the other work we're doing. So if members are content, Chair, we'll just ask Paul to continue on. Thank you.
Right, Paul, I'll call you in then. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Gillian. And thanks to members just for the opportunity to update in relation to the air quality monitoring that we do in the borough. And you have a report in front of you and an action plan as an appendix, and they are prepared in our response to our statutory requirements under the Environment Order, and subsequently they will be submitted to DAERA as a formal requirement. I always open up by stressing that the vast majority of air quality within our borough is of excellent standard, and we are the same as any urban area in Western Europe. We have small pockets of exceedance where the air pollution falls above the emission standards. 2 of those exist within Armagh city itself, and we have 1 within Tandragee. But there is an increasing body of evidence which suggests that ill health effects will occur at any level of air pollution, and certainly those way below the limits where people are exposed to that in the long term. And therefore, our action plan is focused about removing all unnecessary pollution and minimising it to the lowest possible level within the borough. That will bring about, I say, health effects. It'll bring about, a better, cleaner environment for tourism, as well as supporting some of those other measures that Gillian has mentioned. These are fossil fuel emissions, after all, that are causing the air pollution issues. So it fits very neatly into what we're doing in terms of sustainable development. And in terms of our climate change responses. The UK government itself recognises that air pollution is the largest environmental risk to public health. And that was always an easier argument for me to present back in the days whenever our urban areas were covered in smoke and soot. And you could walk down the street and taste and smell the smoke from chimneys in urban areas. But now pollution tends to be much less visible. It tends to be more focused in relation to traffic emissions, and it is harder actually to present that argument in terms of the significance of the environmental risk. Some of the statistics from the government themselves would suggest that the annual mortality impact of air pollution in the UK is somewhere between 28 and 36,000 deaths per year. The NHS and social care costs, it's always easy to talk about things in terms of figures. How can poor air quality within our urban areas give rise to heart disease? But it's a fact that if you inhale fine particles through your lungs, it will enter your bloodstream within minutes and will be within your organs and blood vessels within minutes. These particles, as I say, are making a major contribution to ill health within our area. And as I say, it is recognised as the most significant environmental risk to public health. So as I say, we have identified 3 relatively small areas that lie above the limit values, but the entire borough is to be considered within the action plan. And our efforts are seeking to move to lower emission types of vehicles, to support public transport use, to look at better regulation of fires and open burning and types of solid fuels that are used within the area. So there is a lot of measures that we are calling for within the action plan. It's maybe worth noting as well, observations over the COVID period have been interesting since I've last updated the committee. And during the lockdown periods, we saw a massive decrease in air pollution within our urban areas. And that was to be expected in terms of the vehicle movements being heavily restricted. Now we're seeing those returning to levels that are certainly pre-COVID, if not slightly increased upon that. So in terms of the action plan that's been presented to you, the council are heavily involved through the Environmental Health Department in terms of the enforcement of industrial pollution within our borough. We have controls over domestic burning and are heavily involved in that. The regulation of specific types of combustion plant, biomass boilers and various other issues that have been introduced in recent years to support renewable heat and other initiatives. And we also have air quality considerations in any large developments that are coming forward within the borough, and we work with our colleagues in the planning department on that. We have a network of monitoring stations right throughout the borough, and we provide a strong evidence base, and that is used by central government in terms of developing policy measures to tackle air pollution. We don't have control over traffic emissions, and that remains the fact. We are, however, very keen to see the development of lower emission vehicles, of electric vehicles, and I know that colleagues are working on electric vehicle charging points throughout the borough, and we're seeking to integrate and support that as much as is possible. There are challenges associated with the introduction of electric vehicles as a solution to air pollution. There's big issues with the adequacy of grid infrastructure and the network electricity supply, as well as even just the supply of metals to support the development of these things. So within the action plan itself as well, we're calling for much greater government support for such measures. We're calling for a clean air strategy in Northern Ireland that ties together the work at central government and local government level. We do need new clean air legislation. The legislation that we currently enforce is dated from 1981. And even in the period of time that it was drafted, it is still considering furnaces and boilers that were prevalent in the 60s and 70s. So things have moved on dramatically. So we do require new legislation. We do need new policies and legislation to deal with solid fuels. You may be aware of some of the new regulations within the Republic of Ireland, which are placing very strict conditions in relation to solid fuel sale within the Republic of Ireland. And that will have direct beneficial health effects for the residents of that country. So as I say, it's something that we're calling for here, and we need to move at the same pace, if not better pace. So I say you've been presented with an action plan. We will continue to work towards those actions within that plan, and we'll report to you on a regular basis in terms of the progress on that. As I said to you as well, the measures in this are really about the control of fossil fuel use. So therefore, it weaves very neatly into the net zero carbon actions that the council are considering, and in terms of our sustainable development and climate change strategies as well. Within the report, you'll also see that we have expanded our local air quality monitoring network to include a new form of pollutant called polyaromatic hydrocarbons. And we do have a station in Armagh that monitors that on a continuous basis. And we're providing a very valuable evidence base, not only to local government, but also to central government in relation to those levels of pollution within Armagh and similar urban areas within Northern Ireland. So, as I say, that's a quick run through of the report, and I'd be very happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Paul, for that report. Very intensified, and I can vouch there. You were talking about Armagh. In my younger day, I used to do a lot of running, and I just dreaded the thought of running down the mall on a winter's evening and breathing on all them fumes. So I see you have a light there, Alderman Mutely.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Paul, for the report. I read it this afternoon, and it makes very interesting reading, and I would be largely supportive of it. I better declare at the outset that I retail both petrol, diesel, and to a very small extent that terrible coal that you referred to. Can I say, first of all, in relation to the action plan, I very much welcome the action point 1 to do some sampling in relation to the sulphur content of solid fuels. There are a lot of, should we say, dodgy solid fuels about that would have a very high sulphur content that would be very harmful. And moving on from that, I do have some concern around point 7, where you indicate new legislation to facilitate domestic users away from solid fuel heating, and that council would lobby for the same. Can I ask you to expand on that? Because despite what you say about the legislation that's coming in the Irish Republic, I think it's absolutely disastrous. And time will tell that it's going to be disastrous in relation to people that can't burn turf or can't retail turf. I would have concerns that, you know, we use a sledgehammer here to crack a nut. I can go back 40 years ago and more, whenever we were going to school and the autumn mornings were smoggy and foggy because of the use of coal in the fires. Nowadays, there's a very small amount of people that actually use coal fires, and a lot of them are smokeless. And some of the people who do are based in the countryside. And I would contend that the pollution doesn't really come to the same extent from the fires as it does, as you pointed out, in relation to vehicles, and especially the 3 hotspots that you mentioned in Armagh, 2 of them, and 1 in Tandra. Again, I can totally understand that, because I spent some time in the Mall in Armagh last summer with my grandchildren, and you know, the volume of heavy traffic crossing through Armagh, you know, it didn't surprise me in the slightest. But given the climate that we find ourselves in, where some people can't afford to heat their houses with gas and with oil, I would be very loath to take away, and especially at a time of the year like this, you know, one of the last other resources that people have in an emergency, and that is to burn solid fuel, wood, turf, or whatever. So can I ask you maybe if you could expand on point 7, please? That's the one that I really would have concern with. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Mutie. Paul, do you want to come back in again?
Yes, Chair. Thank you. You're right that the major issue within the borough is traffic-based emissions and traffic-based pollution. There is, however, still an impact associated with solid fuel heating. Solid fuel heating does produce more emissions than liquid, gas, and ultimately electricity. We were careful in our choice of language that the legislation would facilitate domestic users away from those more polluting forms of heating. So we completely recognise the importance of being able to heat your home in the current climate. And indeed, it's something that Gillian and the rest of the Environmental Health Department are heavily involved with. So as I say, what we envisage by this is the expansion of alternative forms of heating coming forward. Air source heat pumps will be the largest new renewable source that comes forward using renewable electricity. They, as I say, are the emissions from them are zero, because it's not a fossil fuel form of heating. But as I say, it's really important that the government facilitates that and make sure that it is affordable for people. We draw the parallel back to the time that environmental health would have been involved in moving people away in smoke control areas, moving them away from open fires and moving them to more smokeless appliances and so on, and the dramatic improvements that did make. And indeed, Chair, those are some of the impacts that changed that situation on the Mall and other urban areas. So as I say, we see this as moving forward and being progressive. That you know, people need to be facilitated. It needs to be affordable for them, but to move to less polluting forms of fuel, and we would think that is something that could be lobbied for with the council's agreement.
Thank you, Paul. just to follow on there from Alderman Mutry there about coal fires, you do remark, and it's very easy to see a lot of new developments. As I said, God help the little children in their houses. There's no chimneys in these houses anymore, and they're all depending on either gas or oil. So it's going to be tough times for them. Following on from this report, yes, I have a hand up here from Councillor Duffy.
Yes, Paul, just following on from that, there seems to be an awful big rise lately, in wood burners for houses and, well, basically working on building sites and stuff. Every bit of wood the boys are taking home and burning them in these wood burners now to try and save money too. Would they cause much pollution?
Yes, Councillor, through the chair. Yes, absolutely they do. I have to show my hand here. They're a disaster for air pollution in urban areas, I'm afraid. And quite often they're used as a form of secondary heating. And that's where the real issue lies. If they're used as a primary source of heating, and that is all that somebody has the ability to heat their home with, well and good, but they have become fashionable as a secondary form of heating. And as I say, solid fuel burning just by its very nature produces more emissions and more pollution than others. So it is something that gives us concern, and Councillor Duffy's exactly right in terms of what he's saying. Some of the products and material that is being burned in it is not proper seasoned wood. It can be damp, it can just be rubbish, it can be waste material, and the emissions from that is astronomically high. So we see, a phasing out of these things over time. I think that is what other jurisdictions have done. And I think that is probably something that will come forward if the government bring forward a clean air strategy. And certainly in air pollution terms, it will definitely make an improvement. But of course, we recognise with, as I say, fuel poverty and issues like that it has to be affordable for all the residents of the borough.
Thank you, Paul. Alderman Mutry looking in.
Is that me, Chair, you're asking for? Yeah, thank you. I'm just ready to concur with the comments. And thanks for the report too, Paul. Concur the comments of Alderman Mutry in terms of number 7 there. I think we do need to take into account, and I know certainly the Westminster government have taken into account the current economic climate we find ourselves in. So I would like to see maybe that softened a bit in some way. Maybe a form of words added at the end where we could just add that we take into account, the public's current financial situation we're in, because it's not going to be feasible, and we don't want to scare people off completely and just being so black and white on. So if we could soften that maybe down, I'd be happy with it then if we could do something around that.
Apologies there, Alderman Baxter. Okay. And that again.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Look, absolutely happy to do so. I think we can use the language where we would, facilitate users away from solid fuel heating where that is affordable and supported by other measures. So that is something that we would more than happy to do. It probably, in fairness and reflection, it probably should have spelled that out a little clearer at the time, but that hopefully that explanation, and we've changed the wording on that.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor McGrath.
Thanks, Chair. And yes, only a very brief point, and it again comes back to 7, and it comes on the back of where we're at the minute in terms of fuel poverty and all of that. And I know a number of people who have reopened the open fire and move because they just simply can't afford to have the oil or gas running. And for us to legislate against that would be putting us, I believe, in a much more difficult position. And I think Paul, and listen, there's a huge amount of work in this report, Paul, so fair play to you. But yeah, we just need to be careful, I think, where we're at the minute in terms of fuel poverty and folk even going to the extent of putting the wood burner in as their main source of maybe heating in the house or using solid fuel. So yeah, just the arena we're in at the minute would be difficult to really bring that through. But it's only a wee brief point. But thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Councillor McIlrath. Paul, do you want to come back?
Yeah, just to Chair, one final point on that. We would envisage this being supported by central government to enable people to facilitate that change. And we are changing them to a much more efficient form of heating. So if you think about an open coal fire, you can't put your hand into the flue of that. There's an awful lot of heat going out the chimney and being wasted. If you're moving towards things like air source heat pumps, that energy is being captured and put directly into your house. So they are more efficient, and ultimately, if the electricity supply, the grid connections are right, it should become more affordable for people to use those more efficient and less polluting forms of heating in their home. But as I say, this sort of change needs to be facilitated by government.
Thank you, Paul. I don't see any other hands. With this now, we're going to need a proposer and a seconder on this. Alderman Baxter, you're happy to propose with the changes, right? That's fine. And can I have a seconder? Councillor McClellan. Thank you very much for that. We move on to then item 3.2, draft response for consultation. I'll ask Gillian. Thank you, Gillian.
Thank you, Chair. Members, there is a draft response in the appendix. It is on a consultation with changes to the Food Law Code of Practice, which really are the documents which direct how we deliver food control services for the borough. They are very technical in nature. This one, no less so. So this is in relation to food standards, composition, labelling and traceability, and the visits and inspections that our EHOs carry out on a planned programme across all of our premises within a set period of time. Members, you might recall that some months ago I advised you that ABC was the Northern Ireland representative on a pilot for food standards, and this consultation is the culmination of that pilot. And so certainly the input of our food team in particular and the learning from this council has influenced the consultation documents which are with you this evening. So members, we have taken time to review what this new delivery model will look like and what the implications might be. And really, with all of the resources really going forward, this is about targeting resources where the greatest risks are and focusing on those greatest risks within the supply chain and recognising those businesses and premises where they have demonstrated long-running high standards with perhaps low-risk foods. So we will have a new intervention rating system based on risk and a lot of supporting documents and guidance on that. So members, I don't propose to take you through the consultation. As I say, it largely is of a technical nature, but I do ask members this evening if you would be content to approve that draft response that is there for you. And obviously as well, for me, just thanking the food team as well for the work that they have put in and being able to say that we have influenced national policy in doing so. So members, thank you. If I could just ask you to consider that.
Thank you, Gillian. And it's great to see ABC leading the way in this. And thank you to your team for bringing this forward. Alderman Baxter, are you looking in?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And just through you, could I ask, is this a UK-wide thing, Gillian, or is this anything to do with the memorandum of understanding came from Causeway Coast and Glens, for example? Or is this totally separate? I know it's very technical there, and I'm certainly no expert on it. I'm reading through that, I might as well be reading a different language, to be quite honest. So I just want sort of assurances that, it's a UK-wide thing as opposed to any of the difficulties you've run into previously?
Gillian?
Thank you, Chair. This is a completely separate issue, members, to the one you referred to. So this is brought through by the Food Standards Agency about how we conduct our food control, and it will be England, Wales and Northern Ireland, Scotland have their own akin regime. So this is England, Wales and Northern Ireland.
Back in again, Alderman back.
So there's no disparity between England and Wales and Northern Ireland at all, then it's exactly the same. And Scotland have their own as separate. So there's no differences I'm trying to sort of ascertain between us and the mainland.
Gillian?
In relation to the approved code of practice, there are no changes in relation to the guidance and the direction which the Food Standards Agency give to us in Northern Ireland. But, we do operate in terms of legislation. There are some changes there. But the code of practice is the same. The code of practice is what we're looking at this evening.
Happy enough, Alderman Baxter? We need a proposer and a seconder for this. I don't see any other hands up, no other questions. So can I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Have to move on here. Members?
Happy to propose, Chair.
Is that Alderman Kennedy?
Councillor Larkham.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Larkin. Thank you. And seconder? Right. Members, can we have a seconder, please, so we can move on? Councillor Pope, thank you very much, Councillor Pope, for that. All right.
Yeah.
We move on to information items 3.3. This is, if members have read this, have you any questions on 3.3? Don't see any hands raised. That's item for information instead. And then we move on to item 3.4 is also an information item. Any members, any questions? Very quiet tonight, everyone. So we can move on to agenda item 4, environmental services. And I'll hand over to Barry for his report.
Evening, members. The first report that I'm bringing to you this evening is an information item. It basically sets out the waste management strategy for Northern Ireland and then for the local councils over the next period of time. The Northern Ireland Waste Management Strategy that had been presented and agreed in 2013 is now run out and is running out. So therefore there's consultation happening with council and stakeholders across Northern Ireland about what that's going to look like, bearing in mind new targets, new objectives, climate, etc. So that's really just saying that that is happening and we are being engaged with. That's due to be completed and presented in the end of 2023. Members will note then the next section is about the council's waste management plan. Number of things you need to note about this, members, are that that will be completed in sort of autumn 2023. Ideally, what should happen is Northern Ireland PLC through DAERA should have their strategy, and then councils should work off that strategy to come up with our waste management plans. That has never been how it has been. We have identified this to the department on a number of occasions, but we are where we are. Historically, the councils had done individual waste management plans, but what we have actually done this time is we have come together as a collective of 11. There will be one waste management plan with then addendums to that specific to individual councils. So that just means instead of having 11 plans or even the waste management plans, which would mean there would be about 3 of them, we're going to try for one to have a bit more of a Northern Ireland approach to waste because it is a Northern Ireland sort of issue. The final section there is again just to let members know that DAERA are engaging with ourselves and other stakeholders about the future of curbside collection in Northern Ireland. There are lots of different options being considered. Some of those are in relation to the types of containers that we use, some of them about how many times we lift residual waste bins, etc., etc. Nothing has been agreed yet. These are options that will be consulted on over the period of time and then will be brought back as and when needed to elected members before any decisions are made. Information item, obviously, members, but happy to take any thoughts or comments.
Thank you, Barry, for that report. Councillor McLennan, you can come in.
Yes, Chair, thank you for that, man, and thank Barry for the report. I suppose it's just in terms of the council waste management plans, and I certainly sort of hear him, and I understand him in terms of reducing it from 11 to 1 right throughout the province and across all of the councils. I suppose he mentioned that there would be 11 separate appendices or whatever, and I guess just if he could enlarge on some of the information and some of the stuff that would be in those appendices, that would be helpful, Chair. Thanks, Barry.
Thank you, Councillor McLennan. Barry, do you want to come back again on that? Thank you.
Yes, certainly. I mean, because we are 11 councils, we have different ways of physically lifting our waste, moving our waste. That means that the general context of waste in Northern Ireland is exactly the same. So we have the same targets, we have the same objectives. Individual councils will deliver those in different ways. We have different recycling rates. We have different makeup of our committees and our councils. So therefore that will be what's in those 11 addendums. We don't expect they'll be terribly long because it is a waste management plan that looks at what we are going to do in the future, relates to the different targets that we have to hit in relation to waste reduction, recycling. It will involve the climate, etc. But the addendums will just be specifically about us, how we interact with that, and how members are likely to deliver that in the years coming.
Thank you, Barry. Councillor McLennan, you come back. Thank you.
Yes, indeed, Chairman, and I appreciate you letting me in for a supplementary. And I suppose the supplementary would kind of focus on, I mean, as a council, is what is proposed likely to increase or to reduce our overall risk in this area? Because obviously we'll be coming on at a later stage in terms of, you know, sort of some of the contracts and so on, in terms of our meeting this evening. And there's obviously an inherent risk there. And I just would, at the higher level, is this a risk reduction for us as a council? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Barry.
Thank you, Chair. No, this is a policy document really saying that here are different avenues that we will investigate and we will look at. So it's not committing us to anything at all. It certainly doesn't go into the detail. It doesn't go into contracts or tenders or any of that. It is, rather than just set a Northern Ireland context, it sets a context for Northern Ireland PLC and then for the individual councils. It's very much high level. It doesn't get into that detail at all.
Happy enough, Councillor McLennan. Thank you. Alderman Mutey, looking in.
Thank you, Chair. Very quickly, I just want a wee word of reassurance from Barry in relation to this, that there's nothing here that will dilute the curbside collection service that we have going forward. Any of the proposals, because remember once before in a legacy council, an officer sort of tried to tinker around that, and thankfully it didn't take wings, but we need to be careful. It's a front-facing service here, that we don't do anything that would harm it. Thank you.
Barry.
No, it is a very high level. It is not committing council to do anything, and certainly the addendums to that, that's one of their prime reasons of why they're there. So it isn't that we as a collective in Northern Ireland are committing individual councils to do anything. That will be down to individual councils to do. And even that addendum does not specify exactly what we're going to do. It just puts it into context of our context. So no, quite right.
Happy enough, Alderman Richard? Okay, thank you, Barry, for that report. Can I now ask for a proposal and a seconder to go into committee for consideration of the confidential items of business? Okay. Members and online viewers, in accordance with the Schedule 6 of the Local Government Act, we will now be moving into confidential session of the council. This means that we will be turning off the public feed of the meeting. This will be turned when the meeting is restarted. Can I ask the ICT officer to please turn off the feed and confirm with me when the confidential section of this meeting can proceed? Thank you. Okay, agenda item 6 is correspondence. Alderman Baxter. Lost him again. Okay. No, it's okay. So, right. Right, there's a letter. All right. Yes, there was a letter of correspondence received on the 29th of November from the Department of Health in response to the Council's letter to the Minister in relation to a request for review of the regulatory framework dealing with the control of cosmetic treatments in Northern Ireland. That was the only item that we had for correspondence. And as I have received no other relevant business, I conclude that the meeting is over. And just to wish you all a happy Christmas and see us in January or maybe before that. But anyway, thank you. Safe journey home.